Yep, trying to go live on Instagram, still not working. I'm pressing go live, go live. Nothing happens. Hello, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. Trying to still get Instagram to respond, but it doesn't. So that's that with Instagram. It's my third time trying. And I invite everybody to come over to YouTube if you're able to, just because I think it might be a more straightforward stream for all of you guys. Hi, Cynthia. So glad you're here. Uh, so I am curious if anybody has anything they want coaching on. Tell me if you do, Cynthia. You'll be in front of the line if you want. Of course, you can put, whatever topic that you want me to talk about today, uh, or you can be very specific to what you want coaching on. My hope is always to have these be my way of being a contribution to this community that works so hard. All right, guys. So, of course, as usual, I come with a couple of topics. In fact, I wanted to speak to you guys about a new book that I'm reading that I think a lot of traders will appreciate. I have here back. It's called Slow Productivity: The Lost Art of Accomplishment Without Burnout. And this is such a great book, especially for traders, because I think it's such a brilliant perspective of how you can be productive. And I know that's something that traders really want to capitalize on, right? How can you guys be as productive as possible with the time you have and time you give to your trading? But there's things Newport, the author of the book, speaks about that really helps anybody who is gun-ho at wanting to have success, but also realizes that, they don't want to burn out, which, I think more than ever before, that is something we all face as a risk. And especially for traders who see this as a marathon and not a sprint, which are basically only the professional traders out there, right? Because we all know the traders who come into this thinking it's going to be a drive-by, they find out painfully quickly that this is not a drive-by. So if you don't want to sabotage, if you don't want to burn out, then I recommend you consider this book. And his title, Slow Productivity, that is he pulls it from the slow food movement. And I don't know anybody who is not into the slow food movement, because we all know that kind of food is like the best, right? The tomatoes are just a little bit more rich and juicy. So it's a whole kind of mindset shift. And he was inspired by a lot of different things that he speaks to, but especially the slow food movement. And, he talks at length about a lot of examples of people, all of us would agree, were incredibly productive, and yet they were able to do it, without burning out. So I think it's a really good book for everybody, especially you guys here. So Cynthia, hi Tina, glad you're here. Cynthia says, I have still been working on my inner saboteur. I took your advice from last week in taking notes of when it comes up, much more than I had previously realized. Well done. I'm so happy that you did that, Cynthia. And I have to tell you, I'm not surprised that it's much more often than you expected, because truly this is the nature of these inner saboteurs. They are way more frequent in our heads than most of us realize. And they often are misidentified as our voice, as our sense of inner GPS. They aren't. And the sooner everybody realizes this, the better. And the other thing that happened this week in one of the clients I was working with was this gal who said, I suspect I won't accomplish as much if this inner saboteur, inner critic goes by the wayside. And I was like, haha, who's talking now? And she's like, is that my inner critic? I was like, hell yeah, it is. Why? Because that inner critic is interested in continuing to squat rent-free in your head. The key is these inner critics never go away, right? But they don't get to drive the bus. And that's ultimately why I suggest, to Cynthia specifically last week, to start to keep track. If you keep an index card by your side or a piece of paper, right, and you just make these little hash marks every time you hear this inner saboteur talking to you, I presume, Cynthia, by the end of the day, both sides of that index card, even a big one, was filled, right? Because this is how frequent most of us are listening to them. So anyway, I think that's really important that you did that. Now, Cynthia, perhaps it makes you realize just how critical it is for you to get clear on what your inner saboteurs are saying so that you can get unhooked from them. All right. One thing I want to say is this Thursday is my third installment of the small group coaching. And I would really like you guys to consider that. I'm going to put the link here for you to, check it out and see if it's for you. It is going to start this Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. It's a 6-week intensive, and it's going to be deep. That's right, Tina. Clear the squatters. Exactly. So this is the 6-week course for traders, and we're going to start with the topic, of course, because look, at the end of the day, guys, you want to realize that the issues you're up against are a big part of what that you feel like stuck sometimes. It's because likely there's other things afoot. Yes, it could be that your strategy isn't defined. Yes, it absolutely could be because you don't really understand risk the way you need to. But often what I've noticed is that our relationship to money, right, has a big part of a trader's ability to kind of get out of their own way. And that is ultimately what, I want you guys to realize, is that these little, small, seemingly insignificant things can sabotage a lot of the different ways we do things. All right, let me just see here. I'm just trying to see if I can. Okay, so Cynthia asks, do you think that the inner saboteur and the inner child are related? I'm going to just say a short answer to that is they might be informed by the same timeline, but they're definitely not related. However, the inner child for any of us is the part of ourselves that potentially is wounded, is not healed yet, is still carrying baggage or fears. And I do believe that inner critic perhaps initially sort of got born by the attempt of that inner child to stay safe. So what I suspect is that at some point, though, that inner critic kind of began its own adventure and is possibly the old fears that our inner child has yet to address, has yet to heal, is part of what kicks up that inner critic. Initially, I do think an inner saboteur, inner critic was kind of there thinking, oh, well, this will help keep that person safe, you safe, so to speak. But that story, that motive is long gone by the time we're adults. So that inner critic, inner saboteur has sort of taken on a life of its own, has sort of come up with a bunch of other stories that possibly have nothing even to do with what we went through as a little kid. And so I wouldn't so much collapse those two. I would just say, okay, I'm identifying what this inner critic says to me, and that would be the next step, Tina, Cynthia. It would be for you to get clear on what these catchphrases are. Start to write them down. Start to notice like what triggers the inner critic for you and or critics, right? There's usually multiple ones for all of us. So I would say start to identify the catchphrases that it says and the circumstances that encourage that inner critic to start being very chatty. There's usually situations that trigger, certainly if we're tired, if we're hungry, if we are, upset about something, a lot of this will kick up an inner critic. There's some basic stuff. I'm just trying to look here. Yeah, okay, good, Cynthia. I'm glad that made sense. I couldn't see your message, but I see it now. All right, guys. So please remember, if you aren't subscribed to the Wall Street Coach on YouTube, please do subscribe. And I almost forgot. I wanted to just give a shout out to our amazing sponsor. What's wrong with me? Silly me. Centerpoint. I want to thank Centerpoint for this live podcast. This is made possible through them. And if you want to learn more about Centerpoint, please see the link I just put in the chat. That is a special offer that Centerpoint is offering those who are participating in this live almost every Thursday, about 8 p.m. Eastern. So be sure to look at them and check them out. I've been so impressed with their customer service. They really deliver VIP service to traders at a level that I think every trader should have, because this is already a very complex and challenging, journey, and you want to have as much support as you possibly can, especially when it comes to a broker. So I hope you guys will check them out. And what else did I want to speak to? Just that I really hope that what you guys do by way of taking the different things that I might speak to, in these conversations, where maybe it's wise for you guys to keep a journal, right? Because in these conversations, we're talking about trading and we're talking about life. And we're talking about just kind of your emotional intelligence, right? How do you cope with challenge? How do you cope with failure? How do you cope with the inevitable bumps that life will throw your way? And what I would really like for everybody to do here is to begin to notice, even in these conversations, what you bring to this conversation, what you see other people bring to this conversation that moves you, touches you, inspires you, helps open up your eyes, helps open up your mind. All of these are ways that each of us grow. But a lot of times, even in the midst of growth, we're not paying close attention. And the reason I'm speaking to this is, one of the things I'm putting out in Curtin Call, which is my newsletter, which I'm going to put that link here too, guys. I would love for you guys to sign up for that. If you aren't currently getting my newsletter, please do sign up for it, because you'll see that there's, so much that if you like what I have to say in these conversations, you're going to be able to, get even more of that in my newsletter. So there's the sign up. I just put that in the chat box. The heart of the message this week is about this catchphrase called "Pride goeth before the fall." And I spoke to this in a short. I do the shorts for YouTube and try to share those on social, especially Twitter, X. Why that phrase? I find, especially with traders that I coach, that there is this perhaps overly cautious concern that that is something that could happen to them. And look, I understand that there's a physiology that's afoot in any trader who potentially is having a collection of winning trades, right? You are going to be biologically predisposed to feel potentially like you're invincible. However, even though that is true, overall, what I see happen is that often the awareness of that possibly happening is heightened to the point where I feel there are some traders who do not allow themselves to celebrate their success even after the trading day is over, right? So not so much worrying about this big picture. I feel there are times when traders put a goal down for themselves, accomplish that goal, create a template for them to become more disciplined, and they succeed at that, and they move quickly on to another goal for themselves. What is the issue with this? The issue with that is that there is no sense of acknowledging the productivity, the accomplishment itself. And because each of us are driven by need, right? One of those needs, which I've talked to you guys about, the universal needs list. And if you don't have that, be sure to get it because it's going to make a huge difference in your life. That concept, one of the needs that is non-negotiable is the need to feel proud. And that's what I want you guys to realize. If you're not ever letting yourself feel proud, if you're never allowing yourself to celebrate and, pat yourself on the back, you're going to be kind of like malnourished, right? All of us have to experience a sense of self-respect, a sense of pride. Now, pride, a lot of times people feel afraid of that. They feel, again, like that phrase, like, oh, I'm going to self-sabotage if I'm too proud, Kim. Like, everybody's unique. I'm not saying there aren't any traders who need to not, to watch out for hubris. But I find it's infrequently the traders that are even self-aware. They're usually afraid of pride. And what I'm saying is there's a healthy level of pride. There's a healthy level of celebration. There's a healthy level of patting yourself on the back. And I want you guys to consider what might be stopping that. Because if you are afraid, right, to celebrate yourself, completely, if you are uncomfortable with your success, then think about it, guys. How much success are you going to allow yourself to taste? How much success are you going to allow in your life? Never mind in your trading, right? It's so easy to think, oh, I have to stay humble, And then guess what? You are unconsciously going to have a bias to keep yourself potentially humble. I'm not talking about the appropriateness of humility in the markets, but I have seen over and over again this predisposition of too much humility. The market's insane. I get that. You're up against smartest people in the world. I get that. But the sense of imposter syndrome that has a tendency to haunt a lot of traders, I believe, is under-identified with a lot of traders. And if you guys, I don't know if you listened to my X Space with Stan Ivanoff, his handle is Corleone Offer on X. Stan talks about this himself, how often many traders are sabotaged because they are uncomfortable with success. So listen to that if you haven't listened to it already. It was a great conversation. He was on my podcast. And then after the podcast interview, we went over to X. All right, Cynthia says, this is a perfect description of me. Sometimes I feel that it could be fueled by greed, never being satisfied, wanting, hoping for more. So Cynthia, here's what I want to say about that. This concept too of greed, and this is part of, what I addressed in that 6-week course. The conversations are about this concept of greed. Even that, I have to say, guys, I find a lot of traders are confused about what greed actually represents. And I'm going to just speak to it right now. Greed often is misidentified. What I see is that greed is sort of like a catch-all phrase when there is a need potentially for security. And this is important too. And this is why it's important for all of you guys to be clear on what your attachment style is. I'm sure you guys have heard me talk about this. Your attachment style can't but help be involved in whatever is going on with your experience as a trader, because our attachment style is the lens that we look upon everything from. And this is especially true when it comes to this concept of greed. So what I'm saying is that greed, often underneath it is actually the need for security. And there could be times when I'm going to just speak to you, Cynthia, because of you bringing up this comment. It could be, Cynthia, that it isn't so much greed that's driving you, but an internal need for security. Now, there's a couple of things I want to say about that. It could be that you don't have enough security, right? Financially. It could be that, you are uncomfortable, right, with the lack of security if you aren't 100% clear on the risk that you are taking, right? So that would all be appropriate then to have a concern, right? That would be appropriate to have a worry about, I am possibly leaving myself, not secure, right? I want that security. That would be an appropriate way to look at things. But here is the piece where it potentially costs you and isn't healthy. Let's say that those boxes are checked. Let's say that you actually have a appropriate amount of risk. Let's say it is an appropriate amount of security is already in place for you. There are times where even if a neutral inspection of your particular financial situation would say, yes, this amount of risk is okay. First of all, as a trader, that's very specific just to that. But outside of trading, yes, this is the level of security that I currently have in my life, and I am I've been very diligent about how much I am going to take over here into my trading account. It could be at times, though, that this deep-seated sense of security, right, based on the attachment style, I don't know if you've ever done that, Cynthia, but I would recommend it, that attachment style of feeling insecure could be informing what feels like never enough security. Because, and if you guys have ever done that Olivia Mellon money assessment that I've told you guys about, it's a very simple assessment that's free, which is your money type. That allows you to see like hoarders, right? There are people who come back after that assessment as hoarders. Those people are usually people who have technically the security, but they don't feel ever like it's enough, right? Usually because I suspect that real deep sense of feeling secure attachment is not something they encountered as an infant. And what happens to us as infants, even in the womb of our mother, impacts us. Gabor Mate talks about this in his book, The Myth of Normal, that we are not only experiencing what our mother is potentially going through in her womb, and obviously as infants after we're born, whatever caretaker's taking care of us is impacting us. And there's even conversations about generational impact. Our grandmother, what she went through is even passed down to us and multiple generations back. So this is all in service to you guys. Like, I don't want you to feel overwhelmed by it, but I want you to just self-reflect, right? What is this all in service to? Improving your self-awareness, guys. The better you understand yourself, the better you potentially can respond and not react to the market. So there is a case to be said. Yes, you have to understand what you're doing in that market. That is an incredible journey, a robust adventure of you really needing to learn things about the market. And it seems to me you are also equally served to understand yourself, because you are going to be the vehicle in which the interpretation of what that market you are learning about that market, you are ultimately going to be interacting with it. And you have to be clear on where your triggers are, because you have them. We all have them as human beings. So I'm going to just read your question there, Cynthia. Security is something that was lacking growing up in all senses, but mostly financial. Cynthia, I hear you. And that is even more reason why you potentially want to become aware of how and where that potentially needs to be healed, right? Because no matter if there's a hole, right, in any of us, from wounds or experiences or a journey through what we went through in our childhood that hasn't been healed, that hasn't been addressed, that we haven't really looked at or tried to do some work around healing it, that it is going to be a potential invisible driver for all of us. And what I want to say is, it's not like, you healed this and it never shows up again. Of course it shows up again. But now you are aware, oh, you know what? Even though my nervous system might be panicked, even though my nervous system is responding or reacting to whatever this environment is, that noticing is the first step at getting unhooked from it. And that's what I want you guys to see. I want you to see that the hooks at least exist. And that allows you to have a little bit of distance, right? You just need that little bit of space so that you can potentially respond instead of react. So Cynthia, what I would say is do some journaling about what that was for you as you grew up. Do some work about this attachment style, at least understanding, because what can happen is that sense, if we don't heal these things, guys, then they are going to be invisibly driving us. They are going to be invisibly taking the vehicle that we each are down a path that is not serving us. And the only way that changes is if we notice. So, something happened to me last week that was very triggering. And I was aware that I was triggered. I was like, oh, look, you're having a complete system response to this trigger. I don't make myself wrong. I try to actually empathize that my whole system is on red alert, right? And that right then and there allows me to not react, but to begin to come up with a way to cope with it. The first thing I'll have to do is probably stop what I'm doing, right? Because I am aware that my whole system is in a compromised state, right? I am not going to be at the top of my game if I'm really triggered. I am not going to be at the top of my game if I am having a flood of, uh, you know, central nervous system buttons, beep, 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 going off, right? The same is true for you guys. Now, I get that sometimes in the middle of a trading day, you're not going to be in a position to necessarily be with those emotions. But this is the key, guys. When you get triggered, you sure as hell better recognize it, because your trading can easily be influenced by that reaction. And that is when you can get into trouble. So at a minimum, notice it. If you have to put it up on the shelf until you have the ability to be with it, the key is when you finish trading, you are going to have to go and be with that hard to be with feeling. You're going to have to go and surf it through. You're going to have to go and discharge it, because if you don't, it's going to stay inside trapped. All right, Cynthia says, I've been journaling this year and it has better enabled me to understand my triggers and my mindset. Excellent. Well done, Cynthia. That is huge. And that is the case for all of us. When we write things down in a notebook, it begins to open our eyes. Oh, I see how this goes with that. Also, it's an opportunity to just discharge the steam, right? It's like we're all a boiling pot of water, and a lot of us weren't encouraged or taught to have a steam vent, and we've been made to feel like we, especially men, guys, like, it's just not politically correct for men to feel comfortable with having emotions. Like, the only emotion that it seems culturally acceptable for men to have is anger. I don't see other emotions that are just part of what comes from being human, being advocated to men. Men are rarely encouraged to have, any emotion outside of anger, right? What are you guys told, right? It's talked about in that great documentary called The Mask You Live In. Just be a man. Like, what the hell does that mean? And that's what that whole documentary is about, is how often, even little boys on a playground, that's part of what the documentary speaks to. You can go up to them and ask them, who's the wuss here on this playground? And a collection of 5-year-old boys will point to the one they think is, wussy, if you will. But where is that coming from? 5-year-olds already knowing this. It's coming from our culture, guys. It's coming from this culture of, don't feel, don't express your emotions, as if you're going to be somehow less than if you do. And this is just so dangerous because it keeps not just men, but everybody from just allowing their own human feelings to be expressed and to come forth. And, if you want to look at the health crisis we have, not just in the country, but globally, so much of this, and Gabor Mate's book and the stats in his book, The Myth of Normal, speak at length about the physical health costs not expressing emotions causes. And I don't want that to be the case for you guys. For women, they're usually less comfortable expressing anger, feeling anger. They feel uncomfortable with it. And for men, pretty much any emotion outside of anger, and sometimes that one too, they are often, hesitant to express. And my hope is, at a very minimum, you guys begin to hear in this, conversation that we have almost weekly, that it's okay to have the emotions. It's not only okay, it's normal, it's human. This is called being a, human being who has feelings. I mean, not just the culture, not just the patriarchy, but also just a lot, unfortunately, of organized religion has also made us feel ashamed for the feelings, make us feel, like we're not a good person if we have these feelings. I mean, this I learned from Raphael Kushner, said, 5 of the 7 deadly sins, guys, they're just emotions, right? How crazy is that? Lust, jealousy, right? Go down the whole list. Like, they're just emotions, right? We don't have any control over the emotions that we find moving up and through us. We do have control, however, how we express them, or if we don't express them. We rarely are going to be in a position where, when those things happen for us, when we have those feelings, like so many people I know feel ashamed for them. And what I hope this does at a minimum is encourages everybody to stop feeling ashamed of them and start to be like, oh, that experience, that feeling, that emotion is coming from likely a need that you have met or that you don't have met. And that's part of why I want you guys to be sure to have that needs list handy, because if you often have feelings such as apathy, anger, frustration, fear, confusion, right? All of these are just feelings, right? Rage, depression, sadness, like all of these are just feelings. But if those are the ones you're consistently having, that is a light on the dashboard of you that you aren't getting your needs met. And you can do something about that. You can become a person who is a steward of your own needs. And this too often shows up with traders. They are not necessarily getting their basic needs met personally, professionally, and they will attempt to get those needs that are very important to all of us, because we're all human, we all have needs. They will try to get those needs met in their trading. And that obviously is not a good idea. Why? Because the market is not a place to expect your needs to get met. And I do often see traders trying to get their needs met with the market. And this also is part of the reason why some traders are hesitant and resistant to when the market says this isn't going to happen. The not cutting a loss, why is that happening for so many traders all the time? Because likely you need to have the market meet that need. But the key here, guys, is get that need met outside of the market, not in the market. Your ability to cut a loss will be much quicker, much cleaner, with less hesitancy if you get clear that you can get a potential need met someplace else. But if you're frequently trying to get those needs met from the market itself, you are going to pay a heavy price. But that is an indicator to you that you don't have some needs met. And until you address that on a personal level, you are potentially going to have your judgment, cloudy. And I know I've told this story before, but it bears worth, it's worth repeating, is one of the traders, during COVID, who was not a novice by any means. She'd been at it for over a decade, but she was taking unusual risk in her trading account. And she was baffled. I don't know why I'm doing this. I know better. Like, this is way above the kind of risk I am normally comfortable with and that I want to take. Like, what could be going on? And what we surmised after talking it out was that she was a weekend warrior. And that weekend warrior need for adventure, need for challenge, need for efficacy, were not getting met because she was not allowed to go to these different, experiences, parks, places that she had previously spent a lot of her weekends in. And so her need for adventure, challenge, efficacy, self-respect, now that was coming with her in her trading. And that was what was having her take unreasonable risk beyond what was appropriate for her, because she was trying to get her need for that adventure met now in her trading. But as soon as she could see that, as soon as she was conscious to that, it stopped, because that invisibly was driving her. So that's my question to you guys. If, look, some of you may or may not have the universal needs list. If you look at the chat box, you'll see that I have it up there. I posted it a few minutes ago. But yes, I want you guys to just throw it in the chat box now. I'd love to hear what possible need could be driving you to stay in a loss longer than you know you should. What you suspect could be, like, is it because you are uncomfortable with being wrong? Is it because you're uncomfortable with loss? Is it because you have difficulty at being with how long it's taking you to get better as a trader? Is it because you have inappropriate expectations? Like, I'm really curious, guys, like, when you don't cut a loss quick enough, see if you can identify what might be behind that. What is the hard to be with that you are running from? Because whenever that is happening, that's what's afoot, right? There is some emotion, there's some feeling you are wanting to not be with. And until you can find your way with that feeling from a place of neutrality, it's going to be tricky. All right. Gerald said, just recently found this channel and been binging the interviews. Thanks for all the great content, Kim. When I think about halting, it seems an idealist bias. We have our own story about it. Well, thank you for the kind words. I'm so glad that you found the channel and that it's serving you. Very happy to hear that. Thank you for letting me know. That was really kind of you to say. So for you, what I'm hearing, Geralt, I hope I'm saying your name right. When I think about halting it, it seems like an idealistic bias, I think is what you're saying. So what that sounds like is you possibly are coming from, this place of this is ideally how it should go. Is that correct? And here's a question for you, Gerald. I'm going to ask you, are you a person who comes from academia? Like, did you get a really higher education? Did you work at a C-suite level or any kind of executive in your life? I'm just kind of curious if you did, because I find those who come from the C-suite level, those who perhaps were in, like, got a master's degree or a doctorate, often those are the people that have tendency to kind of have this idealism, right? They collapse, that sense of, like, the way it should be, the way the world should operate, if you will, right? That should be kind of concept can sometimes impact those who are coming from the C-suite level, those who are coming from academia, because those are two worlds that kind of reward, doing things in a certain way. Whereas the market is like, we have a whole bunch of rules that we might change tomorrow, right? Like, so it's a very different experience for people who come from a very kind of, plotting specific template world, where no matter how hard you work with the market, no matter how many hours you give it, it can still not do what you expect it to. And that can be hard for people who come from other industries where it was a little bit more, okay, so not an executive personally, but with my MBTI being an INFJ, it seems common with that type. Over idealizing everything has been something to get over. Trading has helped with that. I bet it has, Geralt, because that trading is going to force you to be with reality, and reality rarely is the idealized version that we all want it to be. So a good job, you, for knowing your Myers-Briggs type, because, Geralt, you're speaking to these, I want to say that you possibly would really like my assessment. And, it's an assessment I use that allows us to really understand a trader's judgment on their self side and on their work side. I have never used assessments. I've taken the Myers-Briggs countless times when I worked in finance. I've been a coach 18 years now, guys. And I worked in finance for almost a decade before I became a coach. That's 28 years. I've seen so many kinds of assessments out there, but especially the Myers-Briggs. I knew what they were looking for. So I never really was a big fan of that because I kind of feel like you can kind of game it if you take it often enough, if you've been exposed to it and or you know the roles you're going for. But there is a very unusual assessment that got brought to me about 4 years ago that rocks my world personally, and I've been using it ever since with my clients. So, Gerald, you might want to check it out because it is absolutely riveting at understanding where a trader potentially is overvaluing or undervaluing themselves and their trading. So I'm putting that link there. It's called a trading positioning index. See what you think. But here's the thing, Joel, that I want to say. This concept of over idealizing, I think it's a lot more common than not. I do think that is absolutely one of the reasons a trader will not cut their losses. And I would point you towards this inquiry for yourself around what is disturbing for you about the current experience that you're having. Let's say you're taking a trade, it becomes quickly apparent that the idealized version is not going to happen, which is also like short for what you thought was going to happen, right? So I want you to just think for a second, not necessarily now, but the next time you do this, I want you to contemplate, what is uncomfortable for me with this happening? Is it self-judgment? Is it you thinking, feeling lousy about yourself because you didn't think of this happening? Like, I want you to get to what is actually getting kicked up in that moment. The other thing I want to speak to is a fascinating book that definitely assisted me in being with reality, because I too could, years ago, I wouldn't say so much in the last 20 years because of so much work that I've tried to do for myself, but I too used to lean towards wanting to have an idealized kind of outcome. And Byron Katie, her book is called Loving What Is, and her work called The Work is 4 questions that, help us kind of really start to see how we're attached to these idealized versions in a lot of ways. But that book, Loving What Is a really great book and journey to start to see how we can easily get caught up in not fighting, resisting, pushing back on reality. So it's simple, but it's not easy in the beginning. But over time, it does become easier because you begin to realize whenever there's some judgment coming up in anything, it could be a guy who passes you and you're like, he shouldn't be driving that fast. Like, that's a judgment, right? But you know why he should be driving that fast? Because he is driving that fast. So it helps you. For me, Byron Katie helped me come into harmony with reality. And I have found that changed a lot for me because I am less likely to stay in resistance. Think about it, guys. When we're in resistance, that's a contraction, right? Resistance to what's so, we start to tighten up, right? Our hands go across our chest. We're like, no, I don't want it to be this way. Think about how much energy that asks of us, right? Over and over and over again. Often there are people who are living their whole days, their whole lives in a resistant state, in a contraction, right? And think about it, that potentially sabotages you from the next opportunity because you're so focused on holding on to what you wish that trade did, what you wanted that trade to do, what that trade should have done based on X, Y, and Z, that it blinds you, gets you so hyper-focused that possibly what is available for a successful trade is you're blinded. You can't even see it because you're just so caught up in what should have happened. All right, so Gerald says, thank you so much. I will think more on these and check that out. Another thing that I wonder may affect small traders is the psychology bias of the PDT trading. Yes, and I think it's also there to keep some of them safe, which on occasion probably does serve them. But I would agree with you. There's pluses and minuses to that for sure. Gerald says, oh my, also started trading in 2020 during the short squeeze mania. Yeah, I get it, Gerald. Like when a trader starts, the market conditions a trader starts in is also really important to take a look at and really good to consider is that market environment potentially like it's sort of like a footprint or a thumbprint, right? Fingerprint upon you. If you start in a certain market environment, what lessons you learned in that environment easily could become something you take with you that could serve you sometimes, but also could cost you because the environment could be radically different, requiring very different collection of ways to show up. And that's why it's so important to do your own due diligence around market environments. Like understand the cycles, understand that they're going to be often repeated, but you have to understand the cyclical nature of it. You're going to have to understand there's different environments and to honor what environment you're in, even if you think it is this again or that again. And to remember that sometimes that bias of what we prefer, we are projecting on what we're looking at, and it isn't accurate. All right, so a couple of things here that I missed from Cynthia. And Tina. Yes, Tina said earlier, yes, it's taken a long time to get this down. It's improving more now that I stopped stressing about how long it is taking. Tina, that is excellent. So Tina spoke to this last week and to other weeks, and other traders speak to this too, is this incredible judgment about how long it's taking. And, that isn't always based on reality. I see a lot of traders have an expectation that is completely out of reality with regards to where they should be at this point. And, that all I can say is that I want you all who are listening here to see if you can come to terms with that determination as neutrally as possible. Listen to the veterans out there, the trusted veterans, the ones that actually, have been around for, at least 5 years, if not a decade, because they are going to give you rulers to properly measure yourself. And remember, guys, if you aren't a full-time trader, you have to have a different measuring stick than you are using. There's a lot of part-time traders who measure how long it's taking them up against people who are doing it full-time. You have to be honest with yourself about how many hours a week you're giving your trading and what's an appropriate expectation to have in sequence with that, because you're just going to feel demoralized all the time if you don't. I'm not telling you not to have any expectations on yourself. I think it's appropriate, but let's make sure they're in alignment. You don't want to take, somebody who perhaps has no other job, who has no kids, who is just responsible for themselves, who has been at this for 10 years and say, oh, well, it took them this long, it should take me this long. Like, there's factors you have to measure in. And this is where that phrase, compare equals despair, comes from, right? You would easily despair if you're comparing yourself without seeing the full picture, and that is something that happens a lot in the social media, Instagram kind of world, right? We have this crazy world where people look at these pictures of people or lifestyles or I did this, look at me, I have that, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh my God, they have this like perfect life. What's wrong with me that my life is not so perfect, or my trading is not so perfect, or not so whatever? Like, promise you guys, like, you're not seeing the whole picture. So be very careful, when you're comparing yourself, because it's infrequent that you're comparing yourself inaccurately, like an apple versus an apple. Usually it's like an apple and an orangutan. Like, you're not going to be accurately comparing. So please be careful with that. All right. So Cynthia also said a little while ago, wanting to achieve the same level of highly successful traders. Yeah, I get it, Cynthia. There's a lot of traders out there who look up to these people. And, I want you to make sure they're all legit. But if there are a lot of legit ones out there. And I can appreciate that sometimes is frustrating. Like, wow, they were able to do it. I want to be able to do it. But you want to listen to them. They also, the ones that are really honest, they will tell you how freaking long it took. They will tell you how many blowups they had to go through. They will talk about these things. I feel like you guys have selective hearing on occasion. You don't listen to that part of it. You're just like selectively choosing to hear just a small sliver of what they're saying. But you need to hear all of it, because that is what you have to be honest with yourself about. The length of time, the blowups that those traders speak to is part of that journey. And it's just to constantly demoralize yourself, guys, it is not in your best interest. All right, let's see here. Okay, great advice. Good, Cindy, I'm glad that helped. Gerald says, can you imagine how much of the trading community are not taking profits because of AMC GME? They've been taught diamond hands. Yeah, I would agree with you, Gerald. I would suspect, honestly, I don't know. I'd be very curious how many of the traders that started during that period are still alive, are still afloat. To be honest, Gerald, I suspect the market conditions have probably gotten rid of a lot of them, but there could be a lot left, but I don't know how they stayed alive in this different market environment. All right, Tina, I'm glad those words helped. Good. All right, Gerald says that's so important. It's easy to get upset that you're not a millionaire after hitting 100% gain. Exactly. And that's what the opening of this conversation was, right? I'm probably going to wrap up in a few minutes. But what I'm trying to get across to you guys is like the successes that you do have, the places where you have something happen that you've been working towards, that you have been trying your damnedest to achieve. When it happens, for the love of God, please pause. Please acknowledge yourself. Please find a way to celebrate that win. Not because I'm advocating you live in the la la land of I am the best. No, to live in the land of I came up with a goal for myself. I accomplished it. Well done. I am so proud of myself that I got that done. That's what I want you guys to be able to do. And I want you guys to be able to speak about it, at least in this community or any community I have, because I don't feel you guys do that enough. The money doesn't matter nearly as much as getting a solid process. Hell, yeah, that's it. Honoring, recognizing when you have a solid process is going to be important. You guys need to have nourishment along the way. Even in Ironman, they have the water people on the track. They have the people with the, squeezed little packets of electrolytes for a reason. These bouts of being proud of yourself, healthy pride, healthy celebration, patting yourself on the back for checking a box that you've been trying to check for a long time is important and is going to put a little bit of gas in your tank for the next hill that you're going to have to climb, for the next challenge that you give yourself, for the next goal you are going to want to reach. And if you want to go the distance, you're going to need to make sure you get some nourishment. You have a tribe where you can express your wins and have people be happy for you. Celebrate with something. Well, something or someone, but again, this can be difficult if we don't have people who are really looking out for us, right? Unfortunately, there are a lot of frenemies out there, right? You think they're friends, but then as soon as like things start to go well for you or things get busy for you, like then they, are ticked off at you because of X, Y, or Z, or because they're comparing themselves. Like, well, they're doing so well, but I'm not doing well. And they can't share the joy with you. So be careful who you share it with. Not everybody can handle your success, but I I can. And there are plenty of people in this room that can. So how about we do that right now? Anybody have something they want to celebrate before I close this up? That's what I'm going to ask you guys to do. What's something you're happy that you did this week or recently? What's an accomplishment that you achieved that you've been working towards? What's one thing that you right now can say, okay, I did well at that. I'm proud of myself and good job, me. Please, there's 118 people here. There's got to be somebody here, if not every single one of you, who can share a win you had. You don't want to get into the details if you feel it's not something you want to share, but you could just be like, I had a success, Kim, and I am going to be proud of myself today because I realized that I haven't so far. All right. Gerald says she's so right. I bet most of us don't celebrate wins often. We probably celebrate the imagined, predicted wins we haven't had yet more than what is there. Hell yeah. Absolutely true, Gerald. And that's problematic. Tina, getting better at having my eyes in the right place. Well done, Tina. Well done. Eric says Bon Jovi said his latest album is about joy. It took him 10 plus years to get it back. Joy is hard for even millionaires. I would say sometimes joy is even more elusive, actually, for millionaires, because often, again, when people get to and that's a great story, Eric, I'm so glad you shared it. And I'm so glad that John saw that for himself and got himself back to joy. Because again, that's a person, when you have a lot of money, you can have all of your wants, but it doesn't buy you your needs. Joy, having joy is a feeling, right? And what gives that feeling? Getting needs met. That's what happens. So Cynthia says, this week, I cut my losses short instead of overstaying my welcome and losing the gains. Great job, Cynthia. That is huge. I am so proud of you. And here's a little homework assignment, Cynthia. Thank you, Tina, too, for encouraging her. Here's a homework assignment, Cynthia. I want you to tell me or come up next week. Tell me then, how can you celebrate that success? I want you to have a tangible way. Doesn't have to be, some big dramatic thing, but I want there to be a tangible something that you do for yourself to acknowledge that win. Why? Because you want to lock in the reward. You want to show yourself this matters. It matters so much that I am doing this to have it lock in. So that's what your homework is. And I'm going to ask you next week what you did for yourself to celebrate that. All right, let's see here. Gerald says, I've been happy to be learning a lot from studying other traders. Tim Sykes was right. There's never enough studying, and we always think we know everything. Pro tip, we don't. Correct, Gerald. It's true. Of course, people need to study. Of course, you guys don't know everything. And I would agree that it's important to realize that and that there's always more to learn. And I just don't want to see that constant focus on, that you don't know everything. Like, I want you guys to put a few minutes on what you do know, what you have learned. All right, Alex says, a win this week was recognizing to back off of trading small caps as action slowed down. Alex, congratulations. Well done. So happy that you did that. So proud of you. That is excellent. Alex, I'm going to give you the same homework assignment if you're willing to take it on. I'd like you to tell me, how can you celebrate that win? What can you do that allows you to kind of lock it in, that allows you to kind of like be plugged in to how you are honoring yourself for having done that? Tell me, if you can right now, how you might celebrate that, or come next week, if you will, Alex, and tell us how you did honor it and celebrate it. All right, let's see. Cynthia says something she's going to ponder on. Not used to celebrating my successes. Exactly, Cynthia. You probably focus all your time on what you didn't do instead of what you do. It's crazy, guys. Like, this happens so much. And not just in your trading, guys, but in general. Yes. All right. So, all right. The concept here, guys, ultimately is beginning to be in a place where you are going to equally identify what you do well, right? Because your focus is always on what you don't do well. And all I'm saying is that there is a time and a place for you to look at what you don't do well. And there is a time and a place for you to notice what you do well, and that you are going to go the distance if you begin to give yourself these small, pats on the back for what you have accomplished. You want to somehow get some nourishment for the work. When there's a payoff from that work, when there is that sense of, wow, look at that. This time I did follow exactly what I said I was going to, that encourages the self-trust. And the self-trust has to be earned here, right? I say this all the time. You don't have to earn your worthiness, but you do have to earn your trust in yourself as a trader. Because when you are learning and doing all the homework and the studying as a trader, that trust continues to build, as does you being a man or woman of your word. It's very important for you guys to trust yourself to do what you say you're going to do in your trading. All right, let's see here. Mistakes are remembered, wins are forgotten. 100% on an exam, you forget test material, but if you fail, you don't fail again. Yeah. Okay, so Geralt and Eric are connecting over a point, which is excellent. Yeah, so and this concept of appreciative inquiry, I think I've talked about with you guys before, and that is a context in which you start to pay really close attention to what you do well, right? And if you start to focus on what you do well, you often will find that what you don't do well starts to fall by the wayside. So it is a paradigm shift, right? I am not suggesting you don't at all keep track of those losses, but the personalization of those losses can become destructive. You guys want to ultimately be able to find a way to separate your sense of self and your sense of self-esteem from those losses, because that too will distract you and blind you from being able to understand what that loss is teaching you. If you are completely covered with, any of anger or frustration or embarrassment or shame in the face of those losses, you actually are going to be kind of like, blinded by those. instead of being able to learn from those mistakes. So the key here is separating your sense of self-esteem from these losses. Being that collapse with your loss is going to hurt you and cost you more than it's already cost you. It's already cost you. Why would you want it to cost you more? All right, I'm going to bring it to a close. I am hoping, again, last plug for the acceleration course. I hope you guys will consider it. It starts this Thursday. It's $1,800 for 6 weeks. The last 2 that we did were phenomenal, if I do say so myself, and the creators who participated were very happy with it. So I hope you guys will think about it. If it looks like it would serve you, then please come and join us. Also, if you're not on Curtin Call, which is a play on my last name, please sign up on my website, thewallstreetcoach.com, and get your name and email on there. I'm glad the conversation served you, Tina. Thank you for being here. For all of you guys who are here, we had, a nice turnout tonight. I hope this served you guys. Remember that when I do these almost every week, they're in service to your needs. They're in service to what you guys want coaching on. So, hopefully you guys will come next Thursday. And if you, between now and then, come up with like, wow, what would I want to have Kim address? What would I want to have some coaching on? Bring it to the conversation. Think about it. Watch how you trade this next week. Watch the places that you feel like you need to do some work around. Bring it to this conversation. Keep track. Get a journal so that you can keep an eye on the things that you're taking away from this, the things that are helping you in this conversation. And again, some of the books that you might want to read, some of the techniques you might want to practice for yourself. All of these are things that, I believe can serve you as you develop yourself as a trader. And I would definitely sign up for that needs list because I want you guys to really be clear on the feelings we have as human beings when our needs are not met and the feelings we have when our needs are met. Because for you guys to have joy, happiness, security, all of those great, wonderful needs, you're going to need to identify what ones are important to you. And you're going to need to also start to notice what are the feelings you are walking around with most of the time. And if those feelings are unpleasant, then let's get you more clear at what you do need so that you can secure it, right? How can you secure your needs if you don't even know what needs you have? And that's, something that I hope everybody can get connected to. The better you understand what your needs are, guys, you are so much closer to getting them met. But if you don't even know what you need, if you don't even understand yourself that at all, it's going to be really hard for you to get those needs met. And then, you're going to spend more time with those unpleasant emotions. And I don't want you to be there any longer than you guys have to be. You're welcome. Thank you, Alex, Cynthia, Tina, Eric, Gerald, everybody that participated. I don't think I missed anybody, but if I did, thank you to you too. Anybody that was here today, thanks for participating. It makes it so much more effective in my experience. Gerald, thank you so much for being here and for speaking about what you are journeying through. All of you guys are what make this community so great. I think you guys are awesome. I'm so inspired by you every day. You guys are very gutsy, very brave. So please find a way to be proud of yourself, even while you intend to improve yourself. Please be sure to stop, pause, and give yourself some credit in the first place for even being gutsy enough to become a trader, because it's not for everybody and it's hard as you know what. So a little self-empathy to each of you. Please practice that just a little bit, right? Just a little bit, guys. All right. Hopefully I'll see everybody next week or some of you in my acceleration course. All right, guys, be